and welcome once again to another edition of Footnotes. In the studio today, Pastor Brandon, Pastor Brady, Pastor Mark. We're back. We've taken a hiatus, but we're excited to be recording, and today's subject is the Southern Baptist Convention. I know, it's a page turner. You're all just sitting on the edge of your seats right now, and you're saying, oh, I can't wait to hear about this one. But we thought we would help you out. We would let you know what the Southern Baptist Convention actually is. We would tell you what we do when we go to the Southern Baptist Convention once a year. And thirdly, we'd tell you about the state of the Southern Baptist Convention right now. And believe it or not, those are important questions and information for church members who attend church regularly, tithe their money, and care about missions and what is happening globally in the world today. So guys, we're going to talk about our recent excursion to New Orleans, Louisiana, armpit of America. Just kidding, that's Detroit. We're going to talk about New Orleans, Louisiana, and our trip there to the Southern Baptist Convention and what all happened, took place, and how that works. All right, so 3 questions that we've already touched on. What is the Southern Baptist Convention for people who are listening and go, I don't understand that. What does that mean? Number 2, what do you do when you go there? And number 3, what's the state? All right, so let's jump in, guys. Number 1, what is the Southern Baptist Convention? Brady, how would you answer that question?
I'd say the Southern Baptist Convention is a group of, I think last time I checked, about 47,000 churches, almost 50,000 churches, Baptist churches that choose freely to cooperate for the purpose of missions. So there's no hierarchy structure. Every church is local, autonomous. It's not like, other denominations where you have this top-down kind of pyramid of authority. Every local church can do what they want to do, but they freely choose to associate for the purpose of what we call the cooperative program. We give money towards missions to send missionaries and to help fund things like seminaries that are, teaching our future pastors the Bible and how to teach the Word. And so it's just kind of this group of Baptists that technically only really exists 2 days out of the year when we have this meeting where churches can choose to send messengers to vote on different things and how those funds are used that we cooperate with. And so, those 2 days out of the year we come together and we vote on things and just encourage one another, see what missionaries we're sending out. Like this year, we sent 79 missionaries. It's just these Baptist churches that freely choose to cooperate for the purpose of missions. Brandon,
how would you answer the question? What is the Southern Baptist Convention?
Yeah, I would also agree with Pastor Brady. We have, like Brady said, our local autonomous or self-governing churches. And then, beyond that, we have our local associations. So we have, even in our communities, we have our local churches that come together. And then we have our state conventions, like the Mississippi Baptist Convention, which is, again, all the like-minded Baptist churches in Mississippi coming together to cooperate on many levels: disaster relief, schools, whatever needs to be funded. And then finally, the national convention, which we call the Southern Baptist Convention. And one thing, because Pastor Brady touched on this, about our funding going together to do all these things. I mean, namely, that is the cooperative program, and that would literally be the backbone of the Southern Baptist Convention when it comes to, each church. Like, think of our church, Broadway. We have a limited amount of funds each year. I mean, we budget that out. We just passed our church budget a couple of weeks ago, not to date this podcast, but we have a limited amount of funds. And so there are limited things that we can do with those funds as far as planning churches or sending out missionaries. But if you pool 47,000 like-minded churches, even the smallest church in that group is contributing a lot in comparison, because all of those funds are being shared together and going towards, and I wish I had the percentages in my head, but I don't, but going towards international missionaries and church plants, national missionaries and church plants, the seminaries, like Pastor Brady said, the leadership of the convention as they organize these meetings and plan the meetings and support the state conventions and the churches that way. So there's a ton of things. The Women's Mission Union, all those things are funded through just general church members in these local congregations that are pulling their resources together in the convention level.
Cooperating together,
Yes.
hence cooperative program.
Yes.
Not the competitive program, as sometimes we think we're competing with the church down the street that's our fellow Southern Baptist, but we're instead cooperating. So the idea, first and foremost, is that you can pull these 47,000 churches together. They can do more together than they can do separately.
Right.
They can fund things on a larger scale. So we've already pointed out seminaries. I mean, there's what, six Southern Baptist seminaries that are funded when all these churches come together. There are all these missionaries globally. I couldn't even count how many globally are sent out. And then there's missionaries in the States, which are church planting, and they're being funded. And it's a lot of money. I mean, it's hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
Referenced alone with the Lottie Moon Christmas offering, which is just an offering they do every year based off of an old Southern Baptist missionary named Lottie Moon, and given in her honor, and it helps financially give extra. And I think sometimes the goal of Lottie Moon is like, I mean, I don't know, some Christmases I've seen, and don't quote me on this, but over $100 of millions of dollars is our goal this year. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money. If they're raising that extra, imagine what the budget is for all of these
Right.
different things. So you have all these churches coming together cooperatively. Now, I want to hit on one thing that I think listeners would find very beneficial that Brady said, but I want to elaborate on it further. All of these 47,000 roughly churches that come together are autonomous local churches, which means that they have decided on their own to cooperate with the convention. And at any time, if they feel like they want to pull out of the convention and the cooperative program, they can do that. They can decide to not send money any longer to the cooperative program. They can say, we no longer identify ourselves as Southern Baptist. They have the power as a local church to make the decision how they're going to be involved in this whole convention process. And I say that because we had a local church here in our community pull out of the Southern Baptist Convention. And I've had people ask questions about that. How can they do that? Aren't the Southern Baptists going to come and take their property or whatever? Now, to be fair, let's compare. Like if you were Methodist, okay, and I'm not speaking for all Methodists. There's all these different branches, but I know enough. I have a friend who is a Methodist minister, and the Methodists have, generally speaking, a hierarchy of authority. So
the United Methodist Movement.
Yeah, so you have like a bishop who might be over an area, and then that bishop has pastors under he or she in their case, and you know they control regions. So for example, I know when I pastored in eastern Arkansas, the Methodist minister would move every 2 years. So they would bring in a new guy. The bishop would appoint, okay, you are going to go to Harrisburg, Arkansas, and you are going to be the pastor at Harrisburg for the next 2 years. And this guy would be moved in by the Methodist denomination. And then after his 2 years were up, his bishop would say, okay, you did a good job in little bitty Harrisburg, so I'm going to send you to Little Rock, and you're going to get a bigger church, and I'm going to send you there 2 years, 4 years, we'll see. And then they would send him to Little Rock. So there was a bishop controlling the local pastors, okay, not the church necessarily. And the church had a voice, but not a ton. And then you also had the church, the Methodist Church as a general body who, if I understood it correctly, owned the property that the church was on. So if the Methodist denomination said, you know what, this church is not following what we want them to follow, we're going to seize the keys or the property, or we're going to close the doors or whatever. Theoretically, that could be a reality. So there was a hierarchy in the Methodist denomination that had authority over every local church. And that authority was at least in two general ways, through the pastorate and through the physical plant of the church, okay? So let's use that as an example. You got the Baptist, totally opposite. The Baptists are local autonomous churches, which means the church calls the pastor, not a structure or a bishop, and then the church owns the property that it's on,
Right.
or the bank does, or something. The church owns the property that it's located on, and if the local church decides we don't like this pastor or we don't like this denomination or blah blah blah, they have the authority in their constitution, their bylaws, whatever their structure is. They have the authority to make those decisions locally on a local level. Now, Baptists are local autonomous churches that come together to cooperate. And so I say that to point out when people say, what are we going to do about the Southern Baptist Convention? And they say that with alarm because they've heard that the convention is going woke or that the convention is anti-biblical. What is Broadway going to do? Well, Broadway has complete authority in its own self to do whatever it deems necessary to do. So if we decide at any point in the future, hey, you guys you're too radical for us, so we're moving out of the convention and we're going to go be a part of the Baptist Missionary Association or whatever, we have that authority to do that. But we also have the authority to stay, right, and cooperate. Mm-hmm. So it's made up of local autonomous churches that come together to cooperate because they believe that together they can do more than they can do separately. Now, there's also the body of doctrine that unites us, and we don't want to not speak about that. So to be a Southern Baptist, there are certain things you have to agree to. And the Southern Baptist Convention has the Baptist Faith and Message 2000, which was based off of earlier Baptist confessions and documents. That is the most recent one that has been updated. And so when the convention comes together, they appoint a group to study and examine, and they put together a compendium of what Southern Baptists believe. And if there's something that your local church doesn't agree with, well, then that would probably be something to be discussed. Because just like you can associate with the Southern Baptist, the convention, as we saw this year, can also choose to disassociate with you if you are not in line with the doctrinal statement of what they typically believe. Right. So let's just quickly talk about that too. So we're united by cooperation. We're united because we're local autonomous churches, but we're united by doctrine as well. So pretty much the idea is if you go here or you go to Longview Heights, pretty much we believe the same things would be the idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What do you, so you guys want to elaborate on that? Baptist Faith and Message. Brady, I know you have it tattooed on your arm.
Not so much.
The whole thing.
Yeah, the Baptist Faith and Message 2000 is just a good general statement of faith. I mean, it's wide enough that it doesn't get super particular in certain things. So there's leeway for churches to kind of have freedom, but then on the most important parts, Jesus, God, salvation, it's pretty clear and pretty straightforward. And this is what baptism. Why we're not Presbyterian, the definition of baptism in the BFM, this is what we believe. Or this year we talked about, being a pastor and being that office limited to men only. Well, there was certain churches that were, not following the Baptist Faith and Message, and that came to the attention of the, executive committee and all that, and we dealt with that, and then the whole assembly of messengers basically voted to disfellowship from those churches because they're saying on one hand they're being kind of hypocritical. They're saying, oh yeah, we're going to work with you and say we're a Southern Baptist church, but then you're not following our statement of faith. So you're violating our statement of faith. So the BFM is just a decent, good statement of what we believe is Baptists.
And they can find the Baptist Faith and Message on our website.
Yeah, it's on the website.
It's on the Broadway website because we agree with it and adhere to it. So if you ever wanted to know what does that say, you just go to broadwaychurch.org. You can find it there. You can probably go to sbc.com or something like that, and you can find it there. You could Google it. So this doctrinal body kind of unites us together as well. It's a bit of glue that holds us. And like you said, when you come to the convention, you've got all these churches coming together. Every church sends messengers who vote. Now, that's going to move us to the second question that we want to look at. So the first question, what is the Southern Baptist Convention? It's cooperative, local, autonomous churches that pull their resources together to better adhere and follow through and do the great commission of Jesus Christ, which is go into all the world and preach the gospel and plant churches and disciple people and baptize them. And so we unite with other like-minded sister churches to accomplish that goal and to make that happen. And you've got things on the local level in the county, you've got things on the state level, and you've got things nationally called the convention. And real quick, just for somebody that's new to all this, the convention's headquarters is the world Starfleet headquarters is in Nashville, Tennessee, right? Is that correct? So that's where Lifeway used to be, and that's where the IMB is. Is the IMB in Nashville? I think a lot of it is in Nashville.
I think so.
So if you said, well, where's ground zero for these people, I would assume a lot of it is located there. Now, there's other places. We've got camps that you like Ridgecrest in North Carolina, and I don't know where the IMB is at. I should know that, but Brandon's Googling it right now. Is it?
Well, the headquarters of SBC is on 901 Commerce Street in Nashville, Tennessee. And then
Vegas.
Yeah. And then the IMB is
Virginia. That's my guess.
That's definitely IBM. So
IBM's headquarters.
Not the same thing.
Well, it just, apparently.
You'll get it in a minute.
Yeah,
We'll wager.
Sure. Richmond, Virginia.
I
thought it was Virginia.
Virginia.
Richmond, Virginia.
Wonder why. I don't know. Anyway.
I don't know.
So you've got, but headquarters are there in Nashville, Tennessee. Okay, so that's the Southern Baptist Convention in a nutshell. Let's move to the second question. What do you do when you go to the Southern Baptist Convention? Now, Brady has already mentioned that really this is a 2-day meeting once a year. So the convention, technically speaking, is just something that happens twice a year. All these churches come together, they vote, and they make decisions, and then from that, everything is worked out throughout the year. Mm-hmm. But what do you do when you go to the Southern Baptist Convention? So for a member that's listening saying, okay, all of our pastors went, why did they go? What do you do when you go there? And why would that even be something that's important that we should send them to?
I would say the first thing, picture it like a glorified church business meeting. It's just like you have business meetings in your church that are, sometimes you have like a big annual business meeting in your church where you handle like budgets and different matters that are important for the rest of the year. They shape how you do ministry for the rest of the year. Well, that's pretty much what this is. For 2 days, you have all of these resolutions that affect ministry for the rest of the year. You have budget proposals and all of these things and reports that all of these different agencies go through. And I won't skip ahead, but when you get there, you register because you have, again, messengers from 47,000 churches, Southern Baptist churches, and our church could provide up to 12 messengers. So
if a member said, "Man, I'd really like to go to the convention, and I'd like to be a voting messenger," they could.
Yes, we can provide. If
we have the room.
Obviously, the pastors also count as one messenger, but a church can provide up to. For us, it's 12. It depends on your annual budget and the percentage that is given to the cooperative program, but. So that determines how many messengers you have. Our messengers came, registered. They have an exhibit hall, which is probably the best part.
That's the absolute best part.
Yeah, because you have all of these booths just from different agencies, not only the agencies like the Southern Baptist Seminaries and Lifeway and all those things, even though Lifeway actually sets up a physical Lifeway store in the exhibit hall, which is awesome since those don't exist anymore. But anyway, you have all of these people who set up these booths and agencies that help. do various things like foster and adoption care and all sorts of things that are really interesting and helpful. And all of these like little Baptist state colleges that come out of the woodworks to set up booths and recruit. So anyway, you see
Williams,
all that.
Wichita. Yeah,
Everybody.
they all come out of the woodworks and they set up and they say, "Hey, register your kid." And
Yeah.
it's neat. They
Mississippi College and William Carey.
Yeah,
and all
they
those.
give away stuff to people that come by their booth. And you're right. So there's all Life Action was there.
Yeah.
They had a ministry booth on the go.
Mm-hmm.
These are some of the ministries we support. They were there. So it's kind of a big thing. Everybody, because they know there's going to be about 15 to 18,000 people at this convention. So if we want to get our name out or let them know about our ministry, 9 Marks always has a booth that they set up. So there's a lot of people that show up and come, and you can go in the exhibit hall. You can learn a lot. So Brandon, a couple of years ago, you and I met Church Interiors, and so that was a relationship that started us through a process. If we ever wanted to remodel, here's a company that does it. We were able to meet them, talk with them. They said, "Hey, we did First Baptist Marion, we did Bellevue."
Right.
It kind of helps us understand things a little better. So it was really beneficial on the practical level for us. Yeah. And just a week ago, we went and toured First Baptist Marion and looked at what they did when they remodeled their area. So that was, all that was relationships that started in 2021.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, the most important thing, obviously, for this convention is voting. I mean, we are going to vote on business matters that pertain to the convention as a whole. But the second thing would be networking. I mean, networking is huge. You build relationships with all these various agencies, but also connections throughout history. Like my childhood pastor of my hometown church was there, and we connected. I mean, there's all kinds of connections that you build and relationships that you build that last long beyond the convention, the 2 days as a whole. But then the voting part is all kinds of crazy too.
And before we go any further too, there's also a pre-conference that I didn't go to this year, but I'm going to go next year, where they have preaching. So if you go, was there anything spiritual at these meetings? Well, on Monday, they usually do the meetings Tuesday and Wednesday. And on Monday, all day, it's a pre-meeting, and you go and they just preach to you. And
it's the pastor's conference.
Yeah, and anybody can go to
Anybody can go, yeah.
And it's worship and all kinds of neat stuff that happens.
Like H.B. Charles preached, and Phil Newton, who's right up the road, preached or gave a talk, and that was awesome. It was really good.
Yeah, to your point, Brandon, about networking, it felt for me like a family reunion. It's a very happy, exciting, joyful place to be. I went to seminary at Midwestern, so I got to kind of re-meet a bunch of my fellow students and admissions counselors, my advisor for my PhD, like all these people, pastors who are now in different states. Like we can meet them at the convention. So it's almost like you run into all these people that you wouldn't usually maybe see throughout the rest of the year, but all of a sudden you're like, hey, that's my professor, or hey, that's my childhood pastor, or my fellow seminarian who's now pastoring in another state that I never would have seen. So it's definitely a very cool, like networking. You realize that the Christian church is bigger than just your local church. And so you see all these like-minded Baptists from around the country and even international. I mean, there's missionaries, there's people from other, Canada or other countries even who, can be part of the SBC. And so there's, we had a ceremony where we sent 79 missionaries, and we heard a little bit of their story, where they're going. And it was this really cool ceremony on one of the days of the convention. So you're seeing where our money is going. 79 missionaries are going around the world to undisclosed countries. Even some of the missionaries had, a screen in front of their face, so you couldn't even see them. You just saw their silhouette to protect their identity. So it's all kinds of really cool, meaningful things happening at the convention. It's worth going and seeing.
Yeah, and there's accountability. So like the seminaries all give a report so that everybody can hear. And
the other agencies, Lifeway, Guidestone,
they all say, here's what we're doing, here's our budget. And there's microphones. I mean, you're in this massive, it's so large center. It always has that. I mean, we were so far back. You have to watch screen upon screen, like screens, 50 rows back and then another 50 rows back. I mean, we're watching like
16,000 people in one room.
Yeah, so it's massive. You couldn't fit, in certain venues. And so you're sitting back, but there's also all these microphones, and it's like these little booths or whatever they had built, and you walk up and you press a button and you tell them computer-wise what you want to do, and then they recognize you from, okay, microphone 16, you have a point of order, and then so people can ask questions, they can make comments if you're brave enough to do that. But also, too, now I do want to talk about resolutions, because this is what got the most attention in 2021 in Nashville when the meeting was held there. All these people were making these crazy resolutions. So I don't know all the rules and the standards, but I do know that pretty much any messenger can make a resolution, and they can stand up and say, I want to make a resolution that we accept Martians from Mars into the convention. And as dumb as that resolution may be, there's like a process where they have to entertain it. Doesn't mean it's going to become a resolution, but they have to like take it, and then again, there's a process. And
the resolutions committee takes all of those. I mean, I'm sure they receive thousands probably of resolutions, but that committee has to go through all those and pick out the ones that are most
say this
relevant
is valid,
to the convention.
This is not valid.
To the convention, yeah.
So in 2021, you had all these people getting up to the mic, and they were saying all this crazy stuff. Well, I mean, there was one guy, I remember he got up and wanted a resolution to apologize for an 1845 statement that was made at the 1845 Southern Baptist Convention or something crazy like that. And so the media, they have a huge pit where they're all standing and sitting and tweeting. And anything like that they can grab on and get a soundbite, they are going to do it. So you get some goofball who gets up to the microphone who has no authority, who says, I want, all this stuff to be happening in the convention. Well, they're going to film that. They're going to plaster that all over Twitter, and they're going to tell the whole world, the Southern Baptist Convention has gone liberal. And, they're going to show this one guy who's standing up from Podunk, Kentucky, and he's making this resolution to accept Martians as pastors. And so that's typically what was happening. And I'm just like, this is crazy. The media never tells the truth. Yeah. Surprise. They're just trying to get you to watch. And you don't get the whole story.
Well, I heard the same thing while we were there. There were people that were like, "What's happening? What's going on?" And
we heard it's just discord everywhere.
But like literally, what we were experiencing there in the room was completely far from that truth. I mean, it was like Brady said. It was very homey. I mean, it was comforting. It was positive. It was uplifting and encouraging. And I don't want to get ahead to the next point. But I'm just saying, like, in the whole thing. Yeah.
What do you do when you go there? Well, you network, you vote, you hear reports, you see everything that's going on.
Vote on the president.
Yeah, vote on the president of the convention,
and the officers,
and the officers who will kind of lead us for the next year when these things meet and happen. And so 2021, going back to that, I was hearing from people here who were, their churches were saying it's gone liberal and we're leaving the convention. And it's like, that is not what is happening at all. That's what the media is reporting. And not only is there media, there's all these guys that are out there. I know one of them in Arkansas. In fact, I'm pretty sure, did I teach him at the seminary, or was he friends with my friends? Anyway, I'm not going to, but he's at this podunk little church, and he is like always stirring stuff up, always. And he's got a social media platform. And look, here's the thing. Well, I know two guys. I know another guy in Texas who's always stirring it up. And these guys want to be popular. That's what they want to be. In fact, the guy in Texas told me at a Chili's at lunch, he was like, well, I'm going to do whatever I can to get my name out there. So he was going to jump on the same-sex marriage thing, and if that didn't work, he was going to jump on the race thing. And what you got to understand, there's pastors out there that are trying to build social media empires using these moments.
They want to be influencers.
And they want to be popular, and they want to sell books, and they want to get you to read their blogs and all that. And So, in my opinion, they stir it up. And so, if you're dumb enough to listen to that guy who's stirring it up, then you're gonna fall into that, and your church is gonna say, "That's right." And so, there's a lot of that stuff out there. There's a lot of those kind of people, and you just have to take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it is fascinating the discord between, or the disjunction between being there physically and then reading about it on the internet. It was like, did we go to the same event? Like, are you talking about the same thing? Like, this is not even recognizable.
Well, one of these pastors who's a acquaintance of mine, he did this thing the week before the convention. And it was this video of this woman attacking him and saying that she was afraid of him because he's abusive. And I'm like, why are you putting this out a week before the convention? Why? Because he wants to stir up and get traffic. That's it. So, I mean, you can say other stuff, but I don't believe you. So, anyway, yeah, there's a bunch of baloney that's out there. And look, my favorite part of the convention, typically at conventions when somebody gets elected, they do a balloon drop. My favorite part of the convention was when Bart Barber got elected, they dropped fried chicken everywhere. They were like, "You Baptists are going to love this." And chicken just dropped from the ceiling.
That definitely didn't
It's the
happen.
greatest day. And
Not quite.
I'm pretty sure I caught about 3 chicken breasts and 1 leg.
Yeah, I will say though, if you're sitting there in the room, like if you're wondering what it really is like to sit in the room, I mean, it's Robert's Rules of Orders. I mean, like that's what you're hearing all the time. I'm sorry, brother, that point's not well taken, or
yeah, I'm sorry.
this or that.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, do you have an actual question?
People get up who have no clue how this works, and they're like, I'd like to talk about, and they want to talk about.
No, I'm sorry, brother. Do you have a question?
The Sunday school literature section 3 that day y'all wrote about this.
But do you have a
like,
point of order?
Well, we're talking about what it means to be a pastor. So do you have something you want to talk about for that? And they're like, no. When can I talk? I'm like, that'll be later. Sit down.
And it never is.
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So if you're going to be a guy like Bart Barber, who's the president, you got to be gracious.
Yeah.
To not say
He was
that is the
man.
dumbest thing I've ever heard.
No, he was
Jane, you ignorant. Yeah, I mean, it's you can't say that. You gotta.
He's the man for this hour. I mean, first of all, he knew the Robert's Rules of Orders. There's this guy, a page that's standing behind him with the rule book, I guess, and the bylaws, always making sure that the presidents stay in line. But like he almost never had to use him. I mean, he knew constantly this is how it should roll, and he kept it on target. I thought he did a really good job with that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, and there's people who
great.
say, well, he's not aggressive enough and all this, but I think he's doing a great job, and
great job.
he got reelected, and he's a great guy. All right, let's go to the third question. So we talked about what is the Southern Baptist Convention? What do you do when you go there? We learned basically there's chicken drops. And then
What's the state?
What's the state of the Southern Baptist Convention today? Has it gone to hell in a handbag, guys?
According to the media, yes, but no. Again, I thought it was very positive and encouraging. And honestly, even with the issues, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second, that the primary issues that were raised during the 2 days, we all left, and at least 88 to 92% of everyone was in agreement when they left. And I thought it would be way different than that. So, I mean, the fact that there was that much consensus within that many people and that many churches, I thought was very positive and encouraging.
I thought one thing that was very clear is that the convention is in no way going liberal.
Right.
When people say that, I'm like, that is not even remotely true. What I saw in New Orleans was that you have a conservative wing of the convention and you have an ultra-conservative wing of the convention.
Yeah.
Take your pick. So it's like you either have the conservatives or the really, really conservatives, and those are the two groups that are discussing and debating on the floor. There is no liberal group. Now, there might be a person in the audience, there might be a church, and they do exist, but that's not the majority.
Not the
yeah.
Yeah, I was very encouraged by what I saw, and even Like Rick Warren, of course, probably the most, I don't know, I guess the biggest controversial issue. Rick Warren, who obviously has lots of influence, has written all these books, Purpose-Driven Life, Purpose-Driven Church, supposedly has planted like every church in America from his own testimony, but that's, probably not true.
And he's Southern Baptist.
But he's a Southern,
Most people
the
don't realize that.
Saddleback Church over in, where are they in
California, Simi Valley.
Yeah, no, not Simi Valley. They're in like Bullitt South, Anaheim,
SoCal,
Orange,
Anaheim.
that area.
So Saddleback Church, one of the largest churches. I don't know how many thousands of people, but he's not, I think, the senior pastor anymore. He's kind of passed it off to this other man and his wife who are co-pastoring their church, and they've ordained several women as pastors. And so basically their church was brought up as, well, they're not abiding by the Baptist Faith and Message 2000, which says that a pastor must be a man.
And there was a committee that examined Rick
right.
Warren's church objectively, and they said, look, if you want to be Southern Baptist, you have to adhere to what we believe.
That's
if
right.
you don't,
we disfellowship.
Then we're not going to, just like you can leave us, we're going to leave you.
That's right.
And so this committee looked into him and recommended to the floor of 15,000 messengers or whatever it was to actually disassociate with Saddleback Church.
Yeah.
So Rick Warren shows up at the meeting.
That's right.
And he gets on the microphone
to
and he
defend
makes
himself.
this passionate plea on the floor, don't disassociate with us. This is the worst thing ever. And then all of the messengers had a choice to make. What are we going to do? And so we all voted. And we voted by ballot, and you'd mark your ballot, and they took all the ballots up, and it took them, like a day to count it. And then they would come back the next day, and they would say, okay, the convention has voted to disfellowship with Rick Warren.
Yeah. Overwhelming majority.
Yeah, it was like almost 90%, which I was like, wow. So his popularity, his speech, did not convince people to, leave our convictions on that issue, even though that's very, politically incorrect today. To believe that men should be pastors.
Yeah, there was a woman pastor. Yeah. She pastored a church in
Fern
Louisville,
Creek.
Kentucky,
Yeah.
and had been there 18 years as senior pastor.
Yeah.
And she got up and defended herself and said, I don't agree with all of you. And, she went on and on, but I'm not disassociating with you.
Yeah.
And, very nice, but very passionate. And she gave her case. And then the messengers had a choice. Okay, are we going to allow a church that has a female pastor to remain, or are we not? And
that one was even higher. I think it was 92% or something. It was like, no.
Yeah.
And then the third issue was
abuse.
A church that mishandled sexual abuse, and the senior pastor was still, basically they didn't address it at all. And the SBC, is tightening up, making a task force to deal with those issues in a database for churches to communicate about things like that. And this basically church completely mishandled that and didn't deal with anything. And the guy came up and said, we've reached out to you by letter, by phone, by all this stuff, and we've been ignored. Like, you've not done
this guy from the executive committee.
From the executive
because
committee.
They're trying to do their due diligence. And if you say, well, where were they? Why didn't they go to this woman earlier? Well, again, a lot of these things, you've got 47,000 local autonomous churches.
Yeah.
So the convention, as things arise, like anything, they try to come up with solutions. So part of their solution was to get a committee several years ago. We're going to have this task force, and they're going to just, as issues arise, they're going to deal with it, whether it's abuse or whatever. Because, the media, they let abusers. Well, they didn't let anything. I mean, you got all these churches. The convention doesn't have authority over these churches. And now they're putting together a database.
Yeah.
But I mean, how do you deal with that?
It's different from the Roman Catholic Church, where you have all this authority and tell people what to do. You're trying to basically, like a family reunion, cooperate, but they are putting together a database, which I think will be helpful, where people who've been convicted of abuse, other churches, if they're looking for a pastor, can check this database and make sure, okay, they're not like a convicted felon that just like we hired unknowingly. We had no idea.
Now they have to choose to check the database.
That's
the
right.
local church hiring the guy.
That's right.
Has to choose to check that database, but it's out. They're trying to create.
Trying to help churches
think of
communicate.
The churches or the convention as only being able to inform and disfellowship. I mean, really, that's the only ability they can do. They cannot prosecute.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's up to the local church to determine all those things.
Yeah, and even nationally, you look at comparatively, the 40s, 30s. in America, law enforcement wasn't even united. I mean, J. Edgar Hoover came along with the FBI and created this national database for criminal activity. But until he came along, you just had all these local law enforcement agencies that weren't working together on any level. So somebody could commit a crime over here and then run over here. I mean, so that's not uncommon even nationally, you know. So today people think with the internet that everything should be known and we should all know everything. And that's just not reality really on any level when you're dealing with masses and masses of people. So anyway, the convention's doing its best. But yeah, so that's some of the things that happened at the convention. It's conservative. There was some disassociations by the convention. There was churches that joined the convention. There was what else happened? What else did they vote on that was exciting, guys? What else did you see while you were there other than the chicken drop?
I would say the big thing, other than the disfellowshipping of those 3 churches, would be the report from the abuse prevention task force, and just how they are building this database to for all of these churches to be able to access and see, that way they can be protected in how they hire and work with guys who are coming in that they don't really know anything about, and they had some valid questions concerning that, like what happens if there's misinformation on the database, like this person may have been accused but not actually convicted or anything like that. What happened to innocent until proven guilty, that kind of thing. So, which they had some answers, and they were trying to work through that together. They talked about 4 levels of people ending up on the database, how that worked, and I'm sure that report's out there. But I would say that was a big thing that was announced, that they were voted to continue their work for the next year, until the next convention. So I thought that was a big deal.
Yeah, and kind of on that same line, at the convention, let's talk about things that weren't like serious. I took my son to the convention because my wife couldn't go. She'd gone to camp. She'd gone to cheer camp, and she was like, "Look, I need like 1 week of summer before I have to go back and teach. So I'm not going to go with you to the convention because it's always in June."
Yeah.
So I said, "Well, I'll take Landon, my son," and he went, and he was blown away by all these Baptists that were in this room, 15,000. And I let him watch, and it was interesting. No telling what God will do in his life, and he'll always remember. Yeah, I remember going with my dad to that in New Orleans when I was, in the 6th grade. We also went to the World War II Museum. That was a fun thing we did together, and it was literally, we were at the best place. Christy got us the best accommodations. We walked to the convention center, and we walked the World War II Museum, and we walked. We walked to everything. We were it was awesome. They also have different things you can go to, like 9 Marks at 9, and different sessions and lunches and
Midwestern luncheons.
And they give you books. They talk to you about things. You learn about things. So anyway, that's all helpful. What would you guys say? Anything else you'd add?
No, it was.
It's a great time, and if you want to be an engaged church member, I would encourage you to go at some point and just see what it's about. And it really is encouraging to see what, I'd say one of sometimes the weaknesses of like the cooperative program can be we just kind of give money to this thing, but we don't really know like what's happening, or what are the seminaries that we support, or what missions is happening. And so actually coming and seeing missionaries be sent, and seeing and hearing from the seminaries, here's how many students we have, here's where we're going, here's the president of the institution. You can literally ask them questions, you can get to know them, hear from them. And so it's a really way to get informed and be more engaged and know what's going on in Baptist life at a bigger scale than just your local church. So I would encourage anyone who's interested to come and join us next year.
Yeah, and you certainly can do that. Now, that's not saying that the church will
pay your way
or whatever, but if you're interested, you certainly could. So next year it's in Indianapolis, Indiana. They rotate it around to reach, I guess, the most people.
Do you hear the lady that asked for it to be in Maui, Hawaii?
Amen.
In 2028 or something.
Oh, man.
2025 is Orlando. A lot of
Yeah,
Southern
it's in
Fried
Orlando.
Baptists are going to go to that one. And they're gonna be
Disney
like,
World, yeah.
we're
Fry
going
in the
to-
sunshine.
They're going to show up for that. A lot of kids will be at that one.
Uh,
Yeah, that's fun. But, no different than anything else. People say, oh, yeah, well, I had this business trip. My family went along. And
yeah.
I hear that all the time. We had this work convention, and we go every year. And so people do that.
Yeah.
Very normal.
We'll wear the tinfoil hats and Southern Baptist logos.
As we ride the Tron
Yes.
ride. Yeah. I'm just kidding. I don't know. Whatever they're doing over there. Well, very good. Well, guys, so I guess Broadway is safe in the convention. We haven't gone liberal. It's not into the world.
No, I thought it was very positive and encouraging, Kayla.
Yeah, it was my first convention, actually. Lauren and I
Really?
both. Our very first
I
one.
thought you had Southern Baptist
No.
underwear.
No, I'd been to the Missouri Baptist Convention for 4 years, which is basically the smaller state version. And that's about 1,000 messengers from Missouri Baptist churches, and that was a blast. And it was basically just a small version of that. But that was my first national convention. It was awesome. So,
Well, I'll tell you, we have a buddy in Conway, Arkansas, Ben South, who is the cheerleader for the convention. I've never met somebody who is more pro-convention than Ben South. And so I just thought you'd been. I was going to get you together with Ben and get y'all some pom-poms.
no, that was my first
And
time.
let y'all pom-pom that convention next year. But anyway, Brady, you're our Ben, I guess.
Okay.
All right, you got to be our guy. You got to pump us up. All right.
There we go.
Well, on that note, we'll close with the Southern Baptist Convention and this episode of Footnotes.
Sponsored by fried chicken falling from the sky.
Sponsored by the Colonel's Secret Recipe, 12 Herbs and Spices.
And the World War II Museum.
World War
National
II
World War II
Museum. Yes. Who else?
Lifeway.
Lifeway. Thank you, Lifeway. Thank you so much. Are you still alive? We don't know that, but we're hoping you are. Yeah. I saw Brady at the VeggieTale booth the whole time at Lifeway, watching all the VeggieTale videos.
I was at the Bible Man booth, so I didn't see him.
Yeah. So you didn't see him. Yeah. All right.